So this week, Ford sent me the most capable narrow-body F-150 in the lineup, the F-150 Tremor. Now, full disclosure, I haven't spent too much time behind the wheel or in and around later Ford products, so this was a great opportunity to experience what the current generation or nearly current generation has to offer. And make sure you guys subscribe and stay tuned here on the channel if you're curious about other Ford products, because there's certainly several lined up here in the pipeline over the next month or so, so make sure you guys stay tuned and subscribe for that. But anyways, with my time with this vehicle, I've come across several things that I like and dislike, which we're going to cover here in this video. Now quickly, before we begin, I want to give a huge thanks to Ford for sending out the F-150 Tremor for me to test and review for you guys. Without you guys' support here on the channel and the manufacturers sending out these vehicles, I certainly wouldn't have all the expansive content that we have been generating here on the channel. So I appreciate Ford once again, as well as you guys watching. Without further ado, let's go ahead and start with the likes. So my first like here with the F-150 Tremor has to do with the overall cabin noise and the overall quietness that this truck has to offer. Now, of course, the Tremor comes standard with the off-road or all-terrain tires, part of what makes the Tremor package and some of the capability that this truck has to offer. But after driving it for several days, you know, the overall cabin levels are very tolerable, whether driving around town or at interstate speeds. And that is actually one of the highlights that kind of just stood out to me after spending a little bit of time with this truck, was just how quiet the overall cabin is. Now, I can't say for sure that this is 100% substantially quieter than that of the competition here in the full-size pickup truck segment, but that is just kind of what my overall impressions were, was that it was a little bit quieter than I was expecting, especially with the all-terrain off-road tires. So my second like here with the F-150 has to do with the door handle design. Now, I know Ford has been doing this for several generations on their pickup trucks, so this is nothing new in terms of ergonomics or design, but it's something I did want to highlight in terms of maybe other people that are watching this video and are kind of a little bit unfamiliar with their Ford products. So the reason I really do like the door handle design has to do with how it is just implemented so well into the actual grab handle itself. So the handle is kind of implemented halfway between the interior door panel and the outside of the door panel. You simply slide your hand in here, pull it towards you, and that releases or opens the door itself. And now there's plenty of room to kind of stick your hands between the actual grab handle or release handle and the pocket, so you can pull the door closed itself and it doesn't get in the way whatsoever. And it also allows you to clean up the actual rest of the door panel. You can see the window actually dips down here, which is another unique feature of the Ford F-150 or pickup truck lineup. But to me, that is just a very clever and ergonomic way to implement the door handle and clean up the overall, you know, layout itself. And if you're getting in and out of the truck a lot, this might also be, you know, a little bit of a time saver. Rather than pulling the handle all the way up front, which would normally be the location, you can simply just, you know, grab right here, squeeze, and it pops open the door without much issue. Now, my third like here on the interior has to do with the digital gauge cluster and the overall design. Now, I'm sure Ford has been doing this for several years now on their F-150, is offering a fully digital gauge cluster, but here in the 2021 and later versions, this is kind of their latest UI until, of course, the 2024s roll out. But I really do like the gauge cluster for a few reasons. Well, number one, it refreshes very fast, so the numbers are very spontaneous and kind of instantly refresh. There's no lag or anything associated with the cluster, at least from what I have experienced so far. And my second like is just the simplicity of the layout and how easy everything is to read. So you can see the numbers are very large. You can control the center section and some of the layout in terms of what information you want displayed, such as trip, fuel economy, driver assistance technologies, etc. And you can kind of change the layout of some of the top gauges in the center if you want some of them rotated or in a different order. But really, that is just something I really found to be useful on a day-to-day basis, was how simple it was to read, how easy it was in terms of the UI, and it really doesn't display too much information that you don't need or that is not necessary when driving the vehicle. Now, my fourth like here with the F-150 has to do with the exterior zone lighting. Now, like some of the other features, this is nothing new to the F-150, but I still think it is a standout feature here in the full-size pickup truck segment. Even though some of the other manufacturers do have a version of this, I think here in the F-150, it might be the best implementation. So with the zone lighting, essentially it uses all of the external lights available on the truck, including the headlights, taillights, the tailgate light, the side view mirror puddle lights, and a bunch of other lights to basically control where you want the light to be implemented if you're on a work site or camping or anything like that. So essentially you can control it by powering on here on the infotainment system, choose which side, left, right, front, or all four corners to be lit up, and it will focus the light depending on where you select it. So again, if you need the side view of the truck or the side lit up, you can select the left or right hand side and it will light up that. or if you need the front, back, or just the most light possible, which is all zones, you can simply light up the exterior surrounding the truck. It is actually fairly bright, in a matter of fact, so I think that is another benefit because it is a very useful amount of light. But that's just something that I don't think other manufacturers have fully taken advantage of, is the zones that you can do, and you know, kind of creating your own lighting signature depending on what your needs are. Now similarly, my fifth like here with the F-150 Tremor has to do with the Pro Power on board. Now this particular truck is a 5-liter naturally aspirated V8 engine, which is one of the 2 powertrains available with the Tremor specifically, but it does have the optional 2 kilowatt Pro Power on board package, which essentially allows you to turn the truck into a generator and provide up to 2,000 watts via the exterior and interior outlets here inside of the cabin. So essentially you can control it here on the infotainment system or to the left of the driver via the hard buttons, which is a very nice, you know, dual implementation. But going into the Pro Power on board, you essentially have 3 different settings. You can turn all of the plugs off via this power button right here, so none of the plugs will get any power. You can turn the power on, and this will provide roughly 400 watts to the interior plugs only. So you have one in the front, one in the back for the second row occupants. Or you can turn it into the generator mode by pressing that. That will increase the idle of the engine to about 900 RPM and allow up to 2,000 watts of onboard power between all of the outlets available both inside and in the bed itself, which again is a great feature for working, you know, at a campsite or working at a job site, you know, if you're in construction or anything like that and need just a little bit of external power. The truck can provide that. And if you do get the 3.5 liter Ecoboost hybrid, this can supply up to 2.4 kilowatts here in this particular trim level. And of course, if you do get some of the other versions of the F-150, they can provide up to 7.2 kilowatts, including a 240 volt outlet, which again is a class exclusive feature and stuff you just don't see in the full-size truck segment, at least quite yet, until some of the fully electric versions such as the Silverado EV and maybe some of the other manufacturers catch up with this feature itself. Now my sixth and final like here with the F-150 has to do with the available mobile work surface. Now this is something that is fairly new to the F-150 lineup but has been available for several years now, and that has to do with the actual removable or retractable shift lever, I should say. Using this particular button, it essentially allows the shift knob to retract into the dashboard and allows this portion of the center armrest to flip open and provide a mobile workstation. Now Ford says you can do several things with this mobile station, and I have to agree with them. You can use it for a laptop, taking notes on a clipboard or something like that, or just sitting and eating your McDonald's or fast food for all that matter. It's definitely a very useful situation and allows you for a fairly large and flat work area inside of a mobile work office, aka the F-150 or the truck itself. So this again is something that I really don't see from other manufacturers out there, and even though I will say the shift knob itself feels and sounds cheap, especially when you retract it up and down, you know, it kind of grinds and doesn't sound the best and snaps into place like that. I will say it is a very cool feature and something that to me is very cool inside of an F-150, and probably something that I would option myself if I was looking at a truck like this. So, you know, again, I really don't care for the shifter mechanism and, you know, how cheap it feels and grinds and retracts into the dashboard, but I have to say the implementation of itself as a whole with the flip open surface itself is a very standout feature here on the interior of this truck. So that's going to be everything that I liked about the F-150. Now let's move into the things that I didn't like so much, or some of my dislikes. So my first dislike about the F-150, or I should say most recent Ford products, and that has to do with the chime that they chose to use in their vehicles. So when you're having to listen to the chime, you know, on a day-to-day basis, I would say personally I would like Ford to revise it, you know, change it up a little bit, make it a little bit more premium sounding. I think their vehicles definitely deserve a slightly nicer chime. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Are you team current chime, or would you like to see Ford revise the chime? Personally, I would really like to see them revise it. Now my second dislike with this truck has to do with the exterior lock button on the door handle. Now Ford uses a touch sensitive door handle, so if you're walking up to the truck with the proximity key on you, you can simply grab the door handle and the entire truck will unlock. Now if you're wanting to lock the vehicle without grabbing your key fob, you essentially put your finger on this black dot on the front side of the door handle and that is supposed to lock the vehicle. Now, overall performance of this lock button has been terrible. Basically, you either need to hold your finger on it for like 2 to 3 seconds, or basically get lucky and hope the sensor actually senses your finger being on the button before you walk away, because I found myself pressing the button, or touching it rather, and walking away very quickly, and the truck did not lock whatsoever. So I have to come back, hold my finger on it, and then get the truck to lock, and allow the power mirrors to fold in and stuff like that. So overall, the performance of the touch type button on the outside has been terrible, and I really think Ford should work on this and either making it a physical lock button or just making the touch sensitivity a little bit better. Now, my third dislike has to do with the overall 10-speed automatic transmission performance. Now, this particular truck that I'm driving does have 13,365 miles as of me filming this video, so that just may be a little bit of wear and tear on this vehicle, but honestly, I don't think you should have any degraded performance no matter how the vehicle's been driven, whether it's been driven very aggressively or gently or just at 13,000 regular miles. But the 10-speed automatic transmission in this particular truck doesn't perform how I would say is satisfactory. Now, the reason I am a little bit unsatisfied with this transmission mainly has to do with the overall downshift performance. Now, this occurs throughout the gear ratio, so it's not specifically between, gears 3 and 2 or, 6 and 5, but it happens, all over the 10-speed transmission. Say you're, accelerating, driving along at 45 miles an hour and quickly need to accelerate and get the transmission to downshift. Well, it might pick the right gear to downshift into, but the actual, feeling of it downshift is quite harsh. And I've even had times where I'm at very low speeds, maybe 10 miles an hour or less, and I'll get the transmission to shift, and I swear the rear wheels and two-wheel drive will kind of skip, or I can hear, a little bit of the tire losing traction and regaining it very quickly. So I would just say, in terms of the performance of the transmission, upshifts don't seem to be that much of an issue, but you can feel them. But it's mainly the downshifts that I would think that Ford needs to work on, because the performance of it, I would say, is a little bit harsh or rough, to say the least. Now, my fourth dislike here with the F-150 has to do with the audio multimedia controls here on the steering wheel. Now, again, this might be somewhat of a gripe, but honestly, I think this is a much more fair opinion versus that of the interior chime. So the reason I don't like the infotainment controls on the steering wheel is because Ford chose to separate the volume on the left and the tune on the right. Now, a lot of other manufacturers out there keep all of the multimedia audio on either the left or right, depending on where they choose to put them. But here, having them separate and being a right-handed person, so mainly using my left hand to change the audio multimedia on a day-to-day basis, is something that I really did not like how they separate it, because yes, I could change the volume easily with my left hand, but say I wanted to change or skip to the next track here with my right, well, I'd have to actually physically shift my arms around from left to right, then change the station, and then go back to holding the steering wheel with my left hand. So hopefully that makes sense, but personally, I would really like to see all of the multimedia controls on either the left or right hand side, preferably the left, although I will say the buttons themselves are fairly tactile and do respond quite well with the infotainment system. So all is not bad, but I would prefer to have audio multimedia together on the left side. Now, my fifth and final dislike with this truck has to do with the driver assistance technologies, more specifically the lane keeping system, and that's because it's constantly telling me to keep my hands on the steering wheel, even though they are. So I know Ford isn't the only manufacturer with this issue, but this truck constantly will remind me to keep my hands on the steering wheel because I'm either traveling in a straight line or there simply is not enough feedback in the wheel itself for the system to sense that my hands actually are on the steering wheel. So I really think Ford needs to go back to the drawing board and kind of refine this and retune it a little bit better because, this was almost a daily occurrence, and it honestly is incredibly frustrating. I know I can disable the lane keeping system, actually drive the truck manually, but I would rather have the system enabled and just to respond to my overall inputs a little bit better, be a little bit more sensitive to my inputs so it's not constantly giving me the warning on the dashboard to keep my hands on the steering wheel. So that is just, again, not a Ford-specific issue, but this truck did have that issue. So that's pretty much going to do it with all my likes and dislikes here with the 2023 Ford F-150 Tremor. Now, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and or found something helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button below. It greatly helps out the channel in these videos. Subscribe if you guys are not already subscribed, and make sure to stay tuned for additional content here with this particular truck, as well as the upcoming Ford products that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. Now, as far as my quick overall thoughts of this truck, without going into too much detail, because you guys will have to stay tuned for the full driving review as far as that goes, I've been very impressed with my first, hands-on experience with a newer Ford product. I think a lot of the technology is very good, although there are some problems or kind of nuances with it that I did just mention a few seconds ago. A lot of the materials are good within the cabin itself. I do like a lot of the exclusive or kind of more refined features that I mentioned here on my likes and dislikes list, such as the Pro Power on board and the Zone exterior lighting. Those are very cool, but really this is a very capable off-road, full-size truck, has a ton of amenities in terms of features, comes with a fairly high price tag, but I will say I do like the choice of the 5-liter V8 or the 3.5 Ecoboost in the Tremor package in general to give people just a little bit more choice in terms of which drivetrain they want. Naturally aspirated V8 versus a twin turbo V6 certainly is, a choice to make. So essentially, I think if you're in the market for a full-size off-road capable truck, the Tremor is certainly an option you should at least consider or take a look at in person, get hands-on with it, and see if it meets your needs, for what you're looking for on a day-to-day basis. But make sure you guys stay tuned for the full review, like I mentioned, in a separate video coming here very shortly. Overall, let me know what you think of my likes and dislikes. Are there anything that you think there is worthwhile adding to this list of either likes or dislikes, especially if you own the truck over several years? I think that is the best perspective you can get, is people that actually put a ton of miles on these trucks, live with them daily, and just drive and use them as they're intended, hence in an off-road basis, which unfortunately I could not with this particular truck. But anyways, like I said, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Once again, huge thanks to Ford for sending this vehicle out for me to test and review for you guys. And as always, hope to see you guys in the next one.